introduce the members of the panel to you, and I'll start by my right side, where is Maarten van der Henst, who is the Chief of Staff with Koen Gens, the Deputy Mayor of Antwerp. On his right-hand side, to your left, there is Roger Kestelot, who has already been introduced to you. He's the Director General of the LAN, the public bus company here in Flanders. Then we have Stefan Bergstrom, the Deputy Mayor of Sundbyberg, if I pronounce that correctly, the fastest growing city of Sweden, who's responsible for development and land use. Then we have Anne-Christine Frickner, Chairman of Compass, which is a network of cities who are interested, who have a policy or building a policy with regards to Podcar interests. And she's also a former deputy mayor in the municipality of Upplands Väsby, a fast-growing suburb of Stockholm. She also focuses on environmental issues and green technology. To her right is Afra Melki, also a deputy mayor in Järfälla, in Sweden as well. We've got 3 people from Sweden and 3 Belgians here in front. And one of those Belgians also is Steven Tiré. He's a lawyer and a legal consultant to a large variety of companies in the field of different domains, company domains, as well as small and middle-sized enterprises, as well as large and multinational companies. He's a lawyer, legal advisor, and he will introduce the first part of the debate from the legal point of view.
Okay, thank you very much, Mark. Our law office is on the other side of the city center, and I was driving in my not automated, however very safe Scandinavian car towards this venue, and I didn't know where it was, but I was very happy to see that it is here. This is my alma mater, where 10 years ago I graduated as a lawyer. Now, in these 5 years of law school, I have never ever studied any legislation on automated cars, automated driving. Now, you will say that's very obvious, because 10 years ago nobody was talking about automated driving. On the other side, if I would be studying law school today, I would neither be studying any legislation on automated driving, because here in Belgium we do not have any legislation whatsoever in this regard. Now, there lies, in my opinion, and that is very often in Belgium, the tension field between law on the one side and innovation, and in this case the Podcar on the other side. In most cases there's no legislation, and in case legislation would be available, it comes way too late. Now, in the current case with regard to Podcars here in Belgium, we have to deal with the legislation we have, and then we see some very interesting interpretations or arguments on interesting legislation. Some people say we have to work with the railway legislation. However, as you know, in most cases in railway there's always a driver, and I understand that would not be the case in the Podcar. Others are more creative, and they refer to the legislation on roller coasters or on elevators, but in most cases there, that's on private sites. That's not on the public way. So that's not a very good reasoning, in my opinion, there as well. And sometimes we even face legal obstructions. I think most of you know that we have the international treaty of Vienna from 1968. Most countries in developed countries in the world have ratified this treaty, and there's a big problem there. The US and the UK, for example, did not ratify this treaty. But there is a problem. The legislation is incorporated in Belgium in the Belgian drivers code, but the treaty itself and obviously the Belgian drivers code as well clearly states that each vehicle should at any time have a driver. So that's a very big problem with Podcars. And then I had a discussion before with some people, and it was the developer, and he stated, does the driver has to be in the car?
Do you realize that goes very far back, that you could not leave your carriage without a horse?
Indeed.
I'm serious. In 1900, at any point, could you leave a carriage in the street without its horse? And so the first cars were always ticketed because they didn't have their horse. This is a real law.
No, indeed. But if I would quote from the 1968 treaty, the reference to the horse is there in the treaty as well.
Sure, yes.
Even in 1968. So the treaty itself clearly states that the car, whether or not animals are used or not, should have a driver at all times. So you don't even have to go back to the 1900s. Even 1968, the treaty is still there. Now, in my opinion, we can argue whether or not does the driver has to be in the car. Can the driver? Somebody else raised. Can the driver be replaced by software? So I think it's very good. I think the best way to go is just to change the treaty. That's we lawyers. We like things to be clear, although I think most of you don't think that is the case. We like things to be clear, but that for the bad news from Belgium. So we do not really have specific regulation. However, we see that things are changing. Things are changing. We had a very intense debate in the Flemish Parliament last year in 2015 on automated driving. As you all will know or can assume, it had a lot to do with the Tesla, the automated the autopilot from Tesla. Obviously, because it's a lot of in many cases in the news, and then we have today's conference. But in Belgium, I think we have a long way to go. We know that there are some guiding countries, more specifically the Scandinavian countries, the US, for example, the UK and Germany and the Netherlands. And therefore, I look forward to hear from our Scandinavian colleagues on how far they are already there.
We'll come to that in a second. I've got a short question for you, Steven. Suppose we got it all covered. The Podcars are ready, yes. The roads are there, the semi-controlled zones, or even regular traffic is there and is prepared for it. How long? Because it takes two aspects, legal aspects. There's the traffic laws and there's accountability laws. One if something happens. How long would it take, to your opinion, to create the minimal necessary legislative framework in order to make this possible? Is it?
That sounds like a political question.
Is it a matter of months, of years, or decades?
But I don't think that it will. It has to take decades. If we, I think the technology is already out there. Yes, there's a lot of technology already out there. I think it will be not for tomorrow that we will all be driving in automated cars or Podcars. I think the technology still has to be tested, and I think we will probably need one or two, maybe 3 years. But if we start today on thinking how the legislation can then at that time be put in place, I think we can be ready.
Is anyone actually doing this right now? Going through all the laws, accountability.
I know that in for example, in the Flemish Parliament, there are a lot of people looking at the matter. Perhaps Roger can pick up on that.
The first question I have is: do we already know who is the competent authority in order to change the legislation?
That's always a difficult question in Belgium.
At the international level, you have on the European level, which technical specification competence. Then you have the federal level in Belgium. And you have the Flemish Parliament, and then finally in policing, for instance, you have the local authorities that are also competent. And I think it's quite interesting to see that a lot of the discussions are going on in the Flemish regional parliament. But the question is, to what extent is the Flemish regional parliament the competent authority that can change federal legislation? So I think it will take quite a few years perhaps in order to get that legislation right.
Okay, do
Should we
you
ask
know?
questions now or should we wait to the end?
No, you can just interject your questions. We only have to bear in mind that we have to stop at 5:45.
So you brought up roller coasters and elevators, and that is maybe
Other people raised it, but okay.
insufficient kind of framework possibly. And why is that? What, public rides on elevators, public rides on roller coasters, whether they are on private property, is that because you can sign a waiver and say, oh, it's on private property?
But in most cases, that's on private property.
Yes.
And I think that the Podcars will be on public property.
Yes. What's the difference? I mean, I understand what,
Yes.
but people have to be safe in either case. No, I mean
That's true.
good point.
Good point.
Well, for one thing, not all traffic laws apply to private property. There are private domains with a public character, like the parking lots of supermarkets, and there the traffic laws in Belgium do apply. But only for a couple of years. It used to be different in the past. And so you have to very clearly delineate the places where traffic laws apply or not, I think.
There's one set of laws that I haven't heard really whether they apply or not, and that's the laws of physics. Those are in play?
Yeah.
Well, I raised that
We
question.
won't be able to change them no matter how long.
Well, but I've been following this for quite a long time, and I see a lot of attention given to basically the kind of unspoken notion that we can pretty much do away with the laws of physics because these cars are so smart. And what I see most of all is that as long as these vehicles are all roaming around on the streets going at some speed, and I look around, I don't see anybody here wearing airbags. Anybody here have airbags on me right now? So it seems to me that if we juxtapose these machines in the same zone as these other objects that don't have airbags, sooner or later the laws of physics are going to kick in.
Okay.
And to what extent can we design systems so that the laws of physics don't lead to such circumstances?
Okay. We'll get back to that.
And there's one other thing
Yeah.
to bring up, which I found very interesting in my work, is once we get small solar-powered or small electric vehicles, there's no reason why they can't go inside of buildings. And we already have devices inside of airports that go right down through the airport. And if there are already laws, but it's very interesting. So if you go to the Detroit airport, there's a large people mover right inside the main terminal right there. But it's only permissible because the fire department finally approved it and said it was permissible. Typically it's not permissible in anything but Disney, a resort, a privately owned.
Okay.
By code, by architectural or building code, it's not allowed at all. And so now we're going to have devices that could integrate very nicely for handicap reasons and actually go inside of buildings without any real danger. And now what do we do?
Okay, we'll bear that in mind together with the laws of physics. Afram,
Yes.
you in Sweden, who are considered to be somewhat guiding countries in Europe, what's your experience with podcars and legislation or laws?
I will start to say I'm very happy to be with you today. It's the first time, but very interesting. I can start saying that the issue of legislations and regulations is a big issue even for Sweden. We start with in my municipality, so we order a report or a study for implementing podcars. Yes, yes.
How large a city is that?
We have 74,000 people now.
Provincial city.
Yes, and not city, it's a municipality with 3 small cities, and we will be 130,000 to 2030. So we will add the population very fast. That we will build maybe 18,000 units in this time, and we will building a new city from the scratch. It's a very big opportunity with many challenges on the way. But that's why I came to this problem with the infrastructure and the traffic in the Stockholm area, which is increasing rapidly, is a very big problem. It can stop the huge economic growth of the. That's why we are talking about it. And this think about having podcars or autonomous vehicles as an alternative was really between Stefan and Christine and me and several others woke up, and we started to work with the idea. And we got this report for a couple of months ago, and we haven't politically decided what to do later. We will do it on Monday, maybe, I hope so. But the main idea, I can take the legislation part now, of the conclusion. The government is thinking about this area and opening the door. We will not be able to say we can drive with these cars or podcars or these vehicles very fast now, but they open up for a legislation to change in the legislation to be able to have some pilot project if everything goes well to May 2017. And it's a very good point because we always politicians think in 4 years terms. That's why
the amount of time in which you can get payback from the.
Yes, we must think in that way.
Yeah.
You must do. You must be able to continue your project before you go to the elections to show so that's possible to do or not. That's why I think they open the door now. If everything goes well, 2017 in May it will be possible. That's why we are thinking about the next step should be maybe pilot project. In my mind, it's the best way to go. We cannot implement it directly in a huge scale, but because we are growing so fast, we can combine or bind up 2 parts of the municipality in a good way, which will ultimately. I don't know which one will be Podcar or these autonomous vehicles. It depends on the cost. Today we heard from South Africa it's possible to go down with the cost very rapidly. But here it's too much now for the Podcar, maybe with these vehicles in the first time and go through to the other option later.
I've noticed that Anke wants to add something.
Yes, I just want to say Compass is a network with 12 municipalities today, and throughout the years I think it's 20 studies that's been done in Sweden around Stockholm mainly, but also in other parts of of Sweden. So I think that we have done a good part in looking at the possibility of podcars developing the society. The legislation, as Afram says, it's new with the self-driving cars, and it's funny really that we accept that cars can go by themselves out in the street with others that drives the car without asking questions about the legislations. But with the podcars, there have been some questions about the security. When you go alone in a podcar, what could happen and so on. But today people accept that a car can drive itself in the road, and they haven't asked the questions that you bring up here today, really.
So can I ask you a question? Did you say 20 studies?
About 20, yes.
And what is the results of this?
Positive. I work as you introduced me. I'm a politician in Upplands Väsby. We have been doing a study in 2011 that shown very good results in how to combine our municipalities, because we have 3 barriers that stop people from moving. And we have also made another study to see about finance and cooperation with technical companies and so on. But the real problem in Sweden, can I talk about that?
Yes, you can.
Yes. That is that the government don't talk to the region council and the municipality, so we have the same goal to create environmentally friendly transport system for people. So we don't have the goal. In the municipality we talk about it and want it, but the government don't have it on their schedule yet. So that is a big challenge.
Yeah. Sorry, I will give you the opportunity to ask a question. Because I want to come in here because I see this a lot also as a journalist, as a science journalist, which is my field. That you see that the strength of local politicians like you, the 3 of you are local politicians. The more you know the local problems, the better you can tailor solutions to the problems. Yeah. The disadvantage, drawback is that there are many cities who are all studying more or less the same problems, for which they find 80–70% of the same solutions, because some of the problems are found in other cities as well, and that we don't seem one way or another, except on meetings like this, seem to bring this knowledge together. And the higher you climb in the pyramid of democracy, the less you find people, members of parliament or others, who are motivated to try and do something about the local problems. Maybe that's where the government, also in Belgium or in Flanders, should come in and try to. In Belgium we've got the Belgische Vereniging van Steden en Gemeenten, the Belgian Association of Cities and Municipalities, and they want to defend the mutual interests of the cities. Maybe we should do this on a European level. Maybe this should happen in Sweden as well, Stefan. Is it happening now? Do you see that the cities are becoming more important also on a political level?
Both yes and no, I would say. The very big issue in Sweden right now is that we need to build houses. Because we have a big lack of houses.
That's the priority budget-wise.
Yeah, exactly. And also in the debate everywhere. And also since last year, I think there were about 150,000 refugees coming to Sweden. So we really need this. And all focus is on this. And I think also it's very one-dimensional, because the focus is only on the numbers, not on what environment that we have to create for these new houses. We cannot just build houses. We have to think wider and deeper in this. And mobility is one really big issue in this, because we already have a big problem. Stockholm is, as you maybe know, built on some islands in the middle, and also to the north and south. We have the lake and we have the sea. So it's a very special geographical condition we have. And we are getting denser and denser. We're having huge problems with traffic right now. And but the focus is on building houses, which also will make the problem even worse if we don't think of the mobility.
Okay, sir, I overruled you.
Yeah, I'd like to kind of ask a question and get some clarification, because we're talking about podcasts, and there's not a really well-defined definition there. To my mind, there are 2 very distinct types of podcasts. There's podcasts that are driverless cars that are operating on the roads in mixed traffic, and there's podcasts that are on guideways separated from traffic on exclusive guideways. In the US, we have automated people standards that are not legally required, but they can be adopted as legal documents by local jurisdictions, and so they can be used for automated vehicles traveling on guideways, podcasts on guideways. There's nothing for podcasts on roads. Now, is there a similar situation in other countries where podcasts on guideways are fairly well covered by standards that can be used?
No, not yet. No.
Is there a chance that other countries could adopt the American standards and use those, which might be easier than trying to
Create
start
one.
from scratch?
You have more experience in the States, in Chicago, New York.
Well, we have automated people movers in many airports, and there are many automated people movers all around the world. So these have been used around the world, and Podcars on guideways are just a subset of automated people movers.
But perhaps I'm wrong, but I should be corrected then, but I think at least in Belgium, the major issue is not whether it's on guideways or not, but whether it's on public domain or not. And even if it's guided, but on public domain, then you have a huge problem in complying with legislation. So the first issue is it public domain or private domain? That should be solved in the first place.
Anke, if you had the power to prioritize the list of priorities that the government of Sweden should stick to,
In order to transportation, to
yes,
shift
what would be the most important thing you would change?
I think that they have to set regulation and incentives so we can change, have this paradigm shift when it comes to all sorts of transports. And they have to work with the every part of the government, civil servants and so forth, have to go on the same goal. And we don't see that in Sweden. We talk a lot about being environmentally friendly and so on, but we have to do. And that, I think, I lack the incentives from the government. And also to connect the private sector to join in the PPP, public-private partnerships, yes. In Sweden, we used to work more in that way than we do today. I think that we have forgotten the quality of having the private sector with us. We think that the government and the state shall solve everything, and I don't personally believe that, because I heard a lot of smart persons here today. It's really lovely. It's the first time I attend to this conference, and you are so bright and you have so smart ideas, so it's really a joy to be here. I want to say that, and thank you all for giving me some more knowledge. It's really, really important. I think that if I talk about Sweden, I think that we need a person or a team that work with taking the state's hand and the private sector hand and make the cooperation happen, because it's a lack of meeting places also.
On a super local
yes,
level.
Yes.
Okay. We're here in the city of Antwerp. You refer to it. And speaking of Antwerp, you are Maarten. You are the chief of staff of Koen Kennis, who spoke to the audience this morning. Antwerp is the most important city of Flanders and of the world, according to the people from Antwerp. But at least in Flanders. But then there's another big city, a large city, which is Ghent, and they have a totally different mobility approach. This might lead me to the conclusion that in Antwerp, I think you take mobility very seriously, otherwise you wouldn't be hosting this conference to start with. But I get the impression that many cities have this tunnel vision and don't cooperate enough with other cities. How is that situation in Belgium or in Flanders?
Well, I think that's a rather political view. I think Koen said this morning, that we have in Antwerp adopted a strategy of seducing people to think about their transport, and not by obliging them or prohibit them to
really
get somewhere. There are people who need a car, and I think this automated mobility can be a very good solution for the future. I think most of you will have heard of systems like Car2Go. Perhaps in some cities you have them, which you have, I think it's BMW or Mercedes, who has a whole fleet of cars in your city, and you can use them any way you want with your mobile phone. And I think if you can adapt that and think through, and that kind of solutions, well, you have a limited amount of vehicles in a city, because not everybody needs a vehicle every time, every hour of the day, then you can share this type of vehicles, and anyone can take a vehicle he needs. Somebody can call an automatic vehicle for his family. He says, I need 4 places for my children, my wife, myself. And then a larger car comes by, people get in it, and we are off. If you only have to go a few blocks around, then perhaps you will get a smaller car, or perhaps a bike or something like it. I think you have to think about that type of things, and I think, and perhaps Roger will not like to hear that, at that moment public transportation as we know it will cease to exist when technology is that far. But that will be many years from now.
Not tomorrow.
So, can I react to that?
Yes, you can, and then we go to Antwerp.
Well, actually, I think I agree. In terms of, we had a discussion here, and we had one of the speakers, it was you, I think, saying that in the end, all kinds of systems will grow towards another, and I think that in the medium term, it won't even be the long term. We will have some kind of hybrid or modular systems where the border between public and private, and the border between individual and collective, and the border between humanly driven or automatically driven will gradually disappear. And I think it's one of the issues for us as public transport systems that we have to think about this, and which role that we can play together, for instance, with the smart city people in organizing this kind of mobility.
Okay, thank you, Roger. Anki, you wanted to add something to that?
I wanted to reply to the former discussion about developing different types of transportation. And the words that Stefan said in the beginning, that our cities are urban today. People are moving in throughout the world. It's a trend that the cities they are growing fast. And we need to change from cars to public transportations. So when we talk about this, I'm not against cars on roads and self-driving cars. I love technique, so it's not a problem for me. But for me, who wants to see a city that is green, where people can meet and we have a good environment, I don't want the cars on the ground. I want people to meet. So I would like to have a discussion more. How can we build systems that make it possible for people to have a good environment situation?
Yeah, that's a matter of prioritizing,
Yes.
of course.
Yes.
And there, I want to come back also to the gentleman who raised the subject of the laws of physics. Maybe, yes, but I think it's very relevant in the respect that what we tend to forget, or what I haven't heard today so far, is also, apart from physics, is also the psychology of mobility.
Yes.
Maybe if you look at mobility as a quantum physical thing, if you buy a car, or you take the bus, you don't buy a ticket, you don't buy mobility, you also buy the potential fact that you might need a car. If I have a car inside of a motorcycle in front of my house, and I leave it there for 48 hours, I have been benefiting for 48 hours from the possibility to use that car whenever I want to, even if the drive takes me half an hour longer than when I go by bus, because I can skip the planning, I can be in the comfort of my car, and also if I've lived in Zimbabwe, and the only link between my daughter, who had been bitten by a snake, and a hospital was the fact that I had a Land Cruiser in front of my house. So you don't buy mobility, you buy safety and the possibility, and that's quantum mobility, to at any given time make use of that means of transportation, whatever it is, public or private, or without a driver or with a driver. And maybe when we think about Podcars, we should in order to overcome, because we have to leave some of that freedom, we have to invest or get rid of a certain amount of quantum mobility, and we have to compensate for that. And nowadays we see queues to Brussels and Antwerp all day long, almost from morning to evening. People don't mind spending 1.5 hours in their car, even if they know that they could get there by bus in 1 hour.
Yes.
So we should try and compensate that by making those buses or those Podcars more comfortable. We should have Wi-Fi, we should have comfortable temperature, so that in winter we don't freeze, in summer we don't sweat ourselves to death. We should feel secure, because if you guide this with a computer, it can be hacked. And we have had the terrorist attacks in the metro in Brussels, but one thing a terrorist or a hacker cannot do is change the direction of the metro. We can have it exploded, but it's fixed on a track. A Podcar is not fixed on a track. People think about the possibility of someone hacking into the system and shifting that Podcar anywhere he likes. So maybe that's an element we haven't heard enough so far. Have you thought about that in Sweden? Yes.
The factor of fear is a part of our life nowadays. You cannot exclude it, in my thinking. And so you have the problem if it's a car, self-driving car, or an idiot driving a normal car can do some damage. We have seen it in France, for example.
Yes.
So I don't think, but still there is an obstacle for people taking the chance or the first step going to a vehicle which don't have a driver. It's psychological, as you are into. Do we accept it? We accept it in the subway. We don't see the driver. If something happens, if it's a woman who is under attack, nobody will help. If not, people inside will react. The driver is not an action. No more positive. So that problem should be addressed through, in my way of thinking, if you have test projects to let people feel. For a couple of years ago, we had Podcar in EFL and showed people, everybody was interested, they wanted to sit in it. So now it's more tangible. Need people not to do something more. But I would like really to comment on the other thing, because we are building a city now, and we are from the municipality. We can tell people, to builders, not people, how many parking lots you must have. We put it in the permit for building. So we are going down, both in Sundbyberg, Upplands Väsby, and EFL, down more and more. Before it was maybe one parking lot for each apartment. Now we are maybe 0.4. And going down. And now I'm going to the issue of the economical issue, because we have a problem in Sweden. We have three levels of governing: the government, and the regional governing, and the local, which are representative. The government has the right ideas, but they do it wrongly. They have said, as usual, they don't listen to us. We are the smart people. But they said for 4 years we have 2 billion crowns. It's 2 billion. It's how much? 200 million euros. You can everybody from this municipality can ask for this money, for parts of this money, to make new innovations in transport system. But then they close the doors and say you cannot do it before if it goes over the period for the election, it will go away. We don't have the time to do it. So that's the problem. So in order for us in the municipality, in my mind, to deliver something, we must work with the builders. And in my mind, we can give. It's a win-win situation. Now, if we force them to 0.4 parking lot for each apartment, maybe we can go down to 0.2 and say, okay, you benefit, you spare, let's say 50 million. Can we get 10 million to this project? In a way, because it's impossible now. The way the planning we do it now, it's impossible for each family to have a car. We are beyond that. So the solutions would be like this solution, autonomous, maybe Podcars. We have pool cars. Even studies show less people are taking driving license. So it's not something very necessary. Only to be able to move from A to B. Luckily, we don't have snakes in here, so we manage without it.
I think if you in Antwerp, we don't lower the amount of garages or parking lots you have to make in new living areas. because it depends on the place where you are in the city. There are places, new places which are built over 4 or 5 years from now, which have not enough parking places. But people do buy a car over there, and they don't find a place to put their car. They don't have a parking, they don't have a garage, and they don't have a parking place on the street because the new city part was developed without parking places on the street. But those cars exist. I think Podcars can be a solution to that because they can drive further away.
Yeah.
But I do think that people will hold on to a certain amount of personal vehicle for the next 10, 15 years. I think I don't think it will go that fast that you can abolish all type of parking lots in new buildings.
Okay,
I want to come back to
some
this.
questions from the audience.
How about a car?
So you in the back row.
No, I was just wondering, like, with the discussion we'll talk about, like, the private and the public hot cars, and like the governments are trying with all their effort to bring as fast as possible. Then I think about the private companies. Like, we see in the past that private companies were so good in the technology that they're moving faster than governments. So that's my question, like, now the government is trying as fast as possible to make rules for podcasts for all kind of different technology. But the other way, like, you see that private companies moves way faster than like governments can do. And then like my question is like, imagine like a big private company comes to a city or a country and says like, look, this is a mobility plan, it will work like this, we will finance it, like no problem. And the government, then with all the different structures of the government, I think it's really hard way for government to protect themselves against like a big company can put a knife on the throat of the government. So my question is like how, like, is there hard, like, is there, how, my question is how fast can the government act compared with a private company?
Not fast enough. Not fast enough.
No, because like,
Anyone like to comment on that very pertinent question?
No, but I think in Sweden it's very good that we have Volvo cars, we have Volvo buses, we have Scania buses. They are both very innovative. They have to be to stay in the world market. And I think it's very good that we have them because they force also the government to think about these issues. So, and in my case, I think they agree that it's good that the government has a knife on their throat in this aspect.
I'm just reading maybe like look at the example of the Uber, like the biggest example, like it's amazing how it really changed government, certain governments, let's say, like it's amazing that a private company, they changed the entire world, let's say, like in a couple of years. It's like,
but also Sweden, we both have car2go and drive now in the Stockholm region, and this is also something that we have to change the laws for allowing them to park to a cheaper price on our streets. So there are many things that the national government, they are very late with their thinking. They don't have the thinking. No. We see it firsthand on our streets, but the national government, they are very late in this.
One of the things that recently has been taken up by a regional government and parliament is, and that could be useful in terms of innovative pilots, not in innovative overall implementation of new mobility systems. We don't only have low emission zones now, but we also have the concept of low regulation zones, where some things can be tried out, and if the evaluation is positive, then it can be brought into new legislation. But perhaps for quite a lot of innovative projects, that could be a way to follow.
Gentleman from South Africa.
Thank you very much. Just very quickly, the discussions we're having in Macau and in South Africa is with the private sector companies. One of the biggest benefits of podcasts or fixed track podcasts is the fact that you can have the 6 stories of parking lots that they've got at the moment. They can do away with. They can actually use the space again. Security. You go into a system with a podcar, you've already got your clearance before you go there. You can't stop in a station inside the building if you don't have it. Suddenly people can get there easily, quickly, safely, and the landlord saves an enormous amount of property. And the link between the public sector, the public transportation system, the private one, is essential. Because if the public system can get you close to the building, the private sector guy that pays for the link from the public sector system into his own property, and they are standing in lines to do it. They want to do it. They save money, they've got more customers, they've got better security. So that link is critical for Podcars to work. So unless you get the legal side right, where you say it's a natural migration from the one to the other, Podcars will be a novelty. It won't be an economic change driver, which is supposed to be.
Anke, you wanted to
I wanted to comment on the question about government and the private sector and how to look at it. And for myself, I have to say that I work in the municipality and I see the need that we have in our society to change focus and also to make available the technique that are out there today. It's not the future, or maybe we have technique today that's good that we will develop even further in the future. But it's like the government aren't really on the same level. So when we heard earlier about the data that shifts in the car and what security is it, it's not the same car. You do it digital to change the capacity and so on, digital to the car, like Tesla. Yeah, the program, they do a new programming through digital, yes. And it's not the same car anymore. And the government aren't aware of it. So I think that we have a big lack of communication and knowledge and so forth. But still, in the municipality, we need to change the transport system because we are living with the need of building houses and creating places to meet.
Yeah.
So,
Thank you very much, Anke. I'm afraid and I want to apologize myself for the people who haven't had the opportunity to ask their question. But we've got the representative of Minister Muiters who's here, and I have to give the floor to. I used to work for Minister Muiters, so I really want to give him the opportunity to say. But anyway, thanks a lot for your participation, and please give a big hand to Maarten van der Henst, Anne-Christine Flick en Steven TD, Stefan Boris van Appromotie en Roger